constrain the amount of foreign capital available for infrastructure projects, even in the foreseeable future. And this, as we all know, will heighten competition for the available resources. Notwithstanding, in the light of financial uncertainty and relatively moderate growth potential of many developed countries, emerging countries have an opportunity to position themselves as attractive, higher yielding investment destinations. The paper also talks about the role of development banks, stating that from 2007 global economic crisis, that more traditional financing sources such as public expenditure and private bank lending have had even fewer resources available to devote to infrastructure development. The paper says the financial sector is facing a tighter regulatory framework in terms of financing. And even if domestic banks and other financial intermediation vehicles were able to fill the gap, development banks play a uniquely additional role as financial catalysts, drawing private capital into large, long-term projects in countries and sectors where significant development results are likely, but the market perceives high risk. So far, talk about offering risk mitigation through political or partial risk insurance, or guarantees that attract a wide variety of market players, and those that will provide local funding partners with an improved level of creditor status. Development banks can also provide project selection and design. Additionally, offering a range of aid enhancement instruments, including technical assistance and other tools for capacity building that promote the transparent use of resources, accountability, cost-effective delivery, and long-term project sustainability. IDFC members support infrastructure development through a wide range of funding and services. These are international development financial corporations, and the finance project ranging from transnational expressways to sewage treatments, transmission lines, and so many other projects that are capital intensive. And through their experience as financiers, the IDFC, they have identified an area of investment barriers throughout the developing world. And as you all know, in a unique position to help address and manage those risk areas. Let's go to sources of infrastructural funding for successful project implementation. There are a number of factors that have been identified by this paper. And I begin with public sector financing. Like you all know, public sector has been the principal source of financing for infrastructure development. However, physical project constraints prevent government from completely satisfying the immense demand for infrastructure optimization. The use of public resources for infrastructure has a significant opportunity cost, and any increase in infrastructure investment will require spending cut to other important public programs or an increasing physical revenue. Consequently, attempting to meet infrastructure demand through public funding alone will likely cause long-term macroeconomic disturbances. And in this context, attracting resources from both the private and external sectors to complement government spending effort is absolutely essential to closing current financial gaps. And so, the infrastructure development will be able to generate both positive and negative externalities that are unlikely to be captured by market prices. The second point on source of infrastructure funding, talk about the development banks. They also have a role to play in financing projects, and also they can offer benefits of country risk mitigation that have below market interest rates, longer terms and repayment schedules that can be more easily adjusted. Development bank loans can also be paired with technical assistance to ensure successful implementation and long-term sustainability of projects. Furthermore, development banks can put their resources in coordinated efforts to support infrastructure projects. Going to the second paragraph, said the mandate of development banks to provide the financial tools that private sector lacks the incentive to offer. That's another important advantage of a development bank. And that development banks should not compete with commercial banks. If development banks offer financing that could have been provided in the private sector, they can mistakenly introduce distortions into the financial market and divert financial resources from other projects that absolutely require public funding. Therefore, development banks should avoid instances of cross-subsidization and conflicts of interest when structuring financial operations, in addition to providing the actual funds. And regardless of the large amount of resources required, project scales and potential risks of infrastructure projects, public participation through development banks is often a necessary condition for their execution. Therefore, financing by development banks can generate additional positive externalities, as we've seen in the IDLC program 2. Go to C, export credit agencies, ECAs. These are quasi-governmental entities that support domestic businesses by guaranteeing or lending to overseas projects, and they have helped fill the financial breach vacated by banks following the 2008 global financial crisis. Talk about several members of the ECA. They provide insurance that helps restore investor confidence and facilitate investment in high market areas like infrastructure development. I said, according to Asia Development Bank, infrastructure development financing needs in Asia are expected to reach $8 trillion United States dollars over the next decade. And underinvestment continues to hamper regional economic growth. Talking about all these countries in the Asian countries, Indonesia, Thailand, and Australia, saying that the funds by the ECAs has direct investment to infrastructure projects, which include power, gas supply, toll roads, ports, and storage terminals, primarily in the Asian economies. Another source of funding, infrastructure, domestic financing. The developing countries' ability to finance a larger portion of their infrastructure development needs from domestic sources will give them greater flexibility in the formulation and implementation of policies and more control over long-term planning and asset management. However, financing infrastructure projects through domestic savings presents a serious challenge in many emerging countries, like our own country, Nigeria here, where bank penetration remains low. And about 89% of adults have an account, have a formal financial institutions in high-income countries, which account for about 41%, and account penetration in developing nations is about 41%. Globally, roughly 2.5 billion adults do not have a formal bank account, and most of them reside in developing countries. That's a report by Demigro Kunt and Clapper. However, innovative financial tools like mobile money in sub-Saharan Africa have succeeded in breaking down some of the fundamental barriers to wider financial inclusion. And many countries in developing regions will also achieve higher saving rates as they transit to middle income countries. The paper also talk about commercial banks, using commercial banks to finance infrastructure. But saying that low bank penetration has prevented the commercial banking sector from taking on a more central role in infrastructure finance. However, the paper cited examples of Brazil, Chad, and Mexico. The commercial banking sector there serves as one of the principal agents for infrastructure funding. Commercial bank participants in those countries are often linked to structures backed by public resources, which allows the project to be allocated credit ratings close or equal to sovereign investment grade. However, our own commercial banks here don't have much to give out in terms of funding. And even the government has no much as a backup to giving out loans. The commercial banks lack public sector guarantees, that I said, that really attract commercial bank interest rates. And due to this privileged challenge of accurately measuring infrastructure project risk, commercial banks can play an important role in infrastructure finance by offering performance guarantees and letters of credit. However, according to World Bank projects, PPP infrastructure guarantees and letters of credit. Sorry, I say that again. Commercial banks can also play an important role in infrastructure finance by offering performance guarantees and letters of credit. However, in infrastructure resource center, the complexity and duration of finance projects often means that local banks in many developed countries lack the technical capacity or willingness to enter into these projects. And where they do, they tend to be junior members of a syndication. That's unfortunate. Furthermore, the recent global financial crisis has also increased risk aversion levels and regulatory restrictions that could deter greater private investment in infrastructure in the future. For example, it is possible that regulators may require higher capital requirements for infrastructure credits and stronger guarantees, and increasing infrastructure financial costing relative to other sectors, and thus dampening private sector interest. These are areas where commercial banks are facing challenges, especially in developing economies like we have in Nigeria. The commercial banks, many of them are not viable as things are in Nigeria now. Then F, talk about pension funds. And cited example of Morgan Stanley liability infrastructure projects that was rated second only to bonds in terms of expected low volatility, and second only to private equity in terms of expected annual return. And despite the diversification and return potential of infrastructure projects, institutional investment has been quite limited, saying an expected 1% of pension funds are invested in infrastructure development globally, excluding indirect equity investment via listed infrastructure companies. All these restraints or constraints, such as exposure to leverage, legal, environmental, and political challenges, have bearing on use of pension funds. And says, unfortunately, there's a lack of available data explaining the true size, risk, and return of infrastructure projects, which makes it difficult for the pension fund to be channeled into financing infrastructures. However, it says countries like Mexico, Brazil, pension funds represent 10 to 20% of their GDP. It's a massive but yet untapped potential source of infrastructure funding. Ultimately, the principal challenge will be to reach a healthy equilibrium between savings, protection, and the flexibility and administration capacity to invest in assets that generate returns. I think they're still finding a regulatory framework on how to use pension funds in Nigeria, and which I read has been accumulated to about 8.3 trillion naira now, as of today. And that's a large sum of money that can be channeled towards financing infrastructure, but not yet tapped into because of this legal framework that's not been properly put in place. Private capital is another source of financing infrastructure. And there's, although it is a small fraction of those assets that could be channeled through to the infrastructure sector, the infrastructure financial gap will be substantially reduced. And emerging countries attempting to attract private capital will need to increase their capitalization ratios through the use of more consolidated financial vehicles like exchange-listed public investment funds and private equity funds. However, emerging countries still lack the necessary institutional and regulatory framework. I think all bothers about this legal framework, institutional framework that has denied developing countries in accessing many of these laudable areas of taking funds or partnering, getting funds to develop their infrastructure facilities. Then this paper also talked about external financing and said global financial crisis will continue to have a significant impact on the amount of foreign capital available for infrastructure projects, especially in developing countries. Then on one hand, fiscal budgetary pressure will increase demand, and thus competition for multilateral funds and other potentials of many developed countries. Emerging countries have an opportunity to position themselves as attractive, higher-yielding investment destinations. And this will ensure political and macroeconomic stability, transparent institutions, and an effective legal and regulatory framework, which are important factors for creating more FDI, foreign direct investment. So in developing countries, with underdeveloped domestic financial markets and limited access to international debt markets, foreign direct investment could provide valuable financing alternatives for infrastructure optimization. FDI can also import administrative and operational best practices to receiving countries. However, the use of FDI as a source of infrastructure finance is a relatively new development in emerging countries. And public-private partnerships such as concessions, leasing, build, operate, and transfer have surfaced as a way to introduce competition and attract private and external interest to the sector with historic state dominance and natural monopolist characteristics. Currently, the benefits of FDI are not evenly disputed or fully exploited across countries and sectors. Most infrastructure development projects involve large upfront capital projects with uncertain long-term prospects for cost recovery and profit. In this context, emerging countries looking to attract foreign investment will need to focus on building transparent and effective policy and regulatory procedures, as well as human and institutional capacity to implement them. Here they talk about FDI, all the advantages, but yet there are some bridges to cross if you want to enjoy all these things. and which are not yet available in many emerging countries, especially in sub-Saharan African countries. And the paper also talks about multilateral development banks, which has its own unique position in infrastructure financing. They not only provide funding for infrastructure projects, but their transnational ownership structure and regional perspective mean that they can provide an important bridge across the variety of market players and stakeholders. And due to resource limitations and IT competition among sectors and geographical areas, multilateral development banks have a far more important presence in smaller countries. Talk about the Panama Canal expansion project, which requires the expansion of the canal, and some other areas where multilateral companies have supplied money to finance their infrastructure. But it says MDB can also offer risk mitigation through political or partial risk insurance or guarantees that can attract a wider variety of market players. Okay, bilateral investment mechanisms. In relation to bilateral development funds, many developing countries offer infrastructure financing to developing countries, particularly for climate change mitigation projects. Alternative bilateral funding mechanisms have also been employed by countries like China that invest directly in Africa's infrastructure sector in exchange for preferable long-term supply contract of raw materials. I wonder why Nigeria as a country cannot also do this, or also that we have to go through China to use that one again to take advantage of us. However, this type of funding, that is BIM, should be analyzed with caution, and they tend to direct resources to projects that facilitate the development of extractive industries with strategic importance to financing countries. And lastly, we talk about sovereign wealth funds and foreign pension funds. They talk about 50 sovereign wealth funds in 39 countries, citing China, Singapore, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Hong Kong, Kuwait. I can't find any African country here. The majority of those resources are currently invested in U.S. treasuries and other developed countries. Not developing countries anyway. Recently, sovereign wealth funds have started looking to diversify and expand their asset portfolio into higher yielding alternatives assets like infrastructure investment. And many SWFs and pension funds have already realized indirect investment in bonds and stock issues by companies active in the infrastructure sector. However, direct investment in which sovereign wealth funds and pension funds have attained direct ownership of infrastructure assets like airports, seaports, and highways, and subcontracted out the maintenance and administration of such assets. They tend to generate greater incentive for long-term asset conservation. And give an example of Canada Pension that has an independent pension manager with assets of about $166 billion. They acquired 49% ownership, which is the largest urban toll operator in Chile, with a portfolio of about 5 toll roads. Well, at the same time, the SWF investment represents a significant flow of resources to child infrastructure sector. Well, the paper concludes by saying that it is opinion that Nigeria, being a developing nation, can tap into any of the sources listed above for our urgent need for rapid infrastructure development. I thank you for your rapt attention.
Thank you very much. Can we please give him another round of applause? Thank you, sir, was not the one that wrote the paper. It shows that he actually understood everything concerning the paper. And that's why he could present it so efficiently like he did. Can we please give him another round of applause? Okay. So I will just advise that we just keep our questions until the main presenter comes around. I understand he's on his way. But quickly, let me just paraphrase a bit on the paper before we go to the next one. So the aspect of the paper, which is titled Infrastructure Finance Strategies for Successful Project Implementation. He started with the market trends and he told us so many dynamics of the trends. He mentioned urbanization, which of course is the major reason why infrastructure seems to be so important. Because as the nation develops, the need for infrastructure will also increase. So that underpins the reason for infrastructural development. Then he talked about the global supply chain. Now the whole world is like a room. You can interact anywhere. You can do transactions from everywhere. Also customer demands as one of the strategies and one of the reasons why it has become necessary. Then we have technology and innovation. Of course, we know that there are new and emerging trends in the industry. So there are different ways of doing things, and that's why infrastructural development seems to be gaining ground, because there are approaches to carrying out this. I'm sure we know, particularly the power and utilities sector. So many innovations are coming in. Talking about 10 years ago, nobody knows about solar. Nobody uses solar. It's always NEPA, NEPA, NEPA. But now, you can use inverter, you can use solar, you can, so many varieties. And it's because of the trends that are happening worldwide. Then, of course, uncertainty, which is also a key market indicator. He talked about financial pressure too. Actually, one of the principal reasons why infrastructural financing has become so key is because of the pressure in the domestic needs, particularly with respect to financial needs of the developing countries, like our own Nigeria. There are so many competing demands. Therefore, a lot of activities. In Nigeria, we have so many things. Roads are there, hospitals are there. You have, just yesterday they were talking about collapsing facilities in the sport arena. Abuja, we have the National Stadium in Abuja, which after 1 year or two, it has almost collapsed. So those are issues. And when you go to, most times when you watch international competitions, you will hear them talking about so many stadia all over that country. And that's why, and when you have competitions being hosted in nations, and they have sporting facilities all over the place, it brings investment. It attracts attention of investors, because just few months, last 2 months or so, we all witnessed 2 World Cup that happened in Russia. With that, the whole world was focused on Russia. That, in a way, it brings attention to the host nations. But here in Nigeria, how many good stadia can you mention? Just recently in Lagos, the one that we know over the years, which is in Surulere, has just been taken over by Lagos State government because it has barely just collapsed because of lack of maintenance. So these are some of the needs that makes it so compelling for there to be so many financial options to take care of infrastructural facilities in the country. And therefore, in Nigeria, we're talking about debt. Just a few days ago, they were discussing about the rising debt profile in Nigeria, which is running into trillion. And when you have all those factors coming in, you will not but have to seek alternative means of financing infrastructure. And that is why it has become important for a country like Nigeria to have to turn to look for other means of financing infrastructure. And he mentioned the key issues which underpins the the infrastructural financing. He talks about the management of the portfolio, divining and how to deliver successful projects, and identifying and managing the risk. As a matter of fact, for most of the projects that have to do with heavy financing, which are infrastructural facilities, in most of them, why most of them don't pass through the scrutiny of the financier is because of the risk. Because they look at the interplay that Babalaki wanted to finance about 6, 7, 8 years ago. But because of the change of government, when OBJ was there, of course, it was a smooth sailing for Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. But immediately OBJ left, the project suffered very major issue. And that's why I know. So I think I will just paraphrase it and then, so that's on that. And he talks about the strategies. He was able to give us some of the sources of infrastructural funding. He mentioned public sector. He mentioned the export credit agencies, domestic financing, pension fund, multilateral development banks, sovereign wealth funds, and foreign pension funds. I think with that, that's just a summary of the paper. That will give you an idea of the questions so that you can write down your questions. I will not waste time much on this. I will go to the next paper if we are ready for that. My friend, Sukomi. The next paper, so before I go, let's give him another round of applause for his framework for participatory approach to effective project delivery in contemporary times. It was meant to be delivered by Ogufidodo, but we have my friend here, Sunkomi Babatokwe, to do the presentation for us. Can we give him a round of applause as he goes to the podium? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do hope that at the end of this as well, maybe they'll be able to edit the name on the plaque. We'll share, my chairman, sir, will be able to share the, good afternoon. They will share the award. Thank you very much. Once again, I'm Babatokwe Olasukomi, NIQS, Registered Quantity Surveyor. Privileged to be amidst you here. So, as it was said, this paper was prepared by QS Adigbemibo Ogufidodo, but due to unavoidable reasons, he could not be here. Sorry, so the title of the paper is Framework for Participatory Approach to Effective Project Delivery in Contemporary Times. While they are working on the, okay. So, introducing the paper generally, this paper chronicles the contemporary developments in the project project procurement process generally and identified opportunities for the profession of quantity surveying. Its resultant benefits to the construction industry and by extension, the country